Kevin Rowley with Houston Healthcare says this person works at one of their MedStop facilities, and he says effective immediately, all of those MedStops are now closed. Yeah, the storm ripped through Upson County and even picked up a house and moved it. If you look behind me, you can see this is the original foundation where the house stood, and in the storms it was picked up and moved and then dropped right here onto State Route 74. Have you ever wanted to live within walking distance of a movie theater, a food court, and your favorite stores? Well, for some in Centerville, that could become a reality. While many places of worship have closed their doors to practice social distancing, Piedmont Church in Macon decided to think outside the box to keep their doors, their parking lot open. Are you looking for a fun way to relieve stress? Well, the owner of the new Rage Room says a great way to do that is to break things. It all started with a shooting call around 9 a.m. Tuesday morning and ended back here on Green Street after a man was hiding from law enforcement. Law enforcement left this area on Chestnut Hill Road about an hour ago where Gunn was last seen, and there were dozens of people out here searching and state trooper helicopters flying above us. If you take a look behind me, you can see there are still bricks all over the ground where they flew off the building as it was struck by lightning and hit at least two cars that were parked right here on Poplar. Yeah, as you can see in here all around me, some of the post 2 and 6 candidates have been out here since this morning waving voters into the polls. And they said pretty soon they'll pack up and head to their watch party. All right, Suzanne and Courtney, it is official. About 30 minutes ago, General Beauregard Lee came out of his mansion behind me and he did see his shadow, which means 6 more weeks of winter. And I'm here with the Dawson Trails director, Ike English. And Ike, tell me a little bit about Beauregard Lee.
Well, this is his 39th year making the weather proclamation. This is his 3rd year here, and we're not happy with what he said this morning.
I was going to say, I'm not a big fan either. I was hoping for that warmer weather to come.
I was too, but who am I to argue with him?
I agree. All right, guys, that's the word. Music fills the sanctuary at Vineville United Methodist Church. But the pews are empty.
And I never thought I'd send out a video to the church and say, don't come to church.
As the threat of coronavirus continues to grow, Senior Pastor Jimmy Asbull decided it was best to ask the congregation to stay home and watch the service on their phones and TVs.
The things the CDC is asking us to do for as far as social distancing with children and even in worship to be 6 feet apart, we weren't sure that we could do that.
In downtown Macon, the doors of Mulberry Street United Methodist Church were open, but only to those that the CDC says are not at risk. For everyone else, they could worship on their phones.
I never thought I would ever be happy to see a small congregation.
Creed Henshaw says they wanted to still have a worship service, but to do it safely. People were spread out in the pews, the offering plate was not passed, and people were urged to avoid shaking hands or hugging.
We felt like we could do this responsibly and hopefully not put anybody at risk.
Despite being open this Sunday, for at least the next 2 weeks, they will close their doors.
Never thought I would ever say to people, don't come to church.
Asbull says until the end of the month, Vineville United Methodist will continue to do a live stream with music, sermons, and prayer, but the sanctuary will remain empty.
We just figured out of love for our most vulnerable, we needed to make sure we did no harm.
Henshaw says he believes when the Mulberry Methodist doors finally reopen, the congregation will be ready.
We'll come back with hearts filled with praise and gratitude.
Now, while we've not seen many places around Central Georgia charging a COVID-19 fee yet, if businesses do decide to implement that charge, is it legal? This post from a sushi restaurant in West Plains, Missouri made headlines when they announced they'd be adding a COVID-19 surcharge to everyone's bill due to rising meat prices, something Ken MCCALL in Warner Robins is becoming all too familiar with.
The beef costs have just doubled, in some cases tripled, along with some of the other processed meats that we use.
So to cover the extra costs of not only the meat, but also masks and takeout containers, he had to raise the prices of some of his sandwiches by 99 cents.
The only thing that I've raised is the price of the sandwiches with beef on them.
So raising prices is one thing, but how about an added charge on top of the menu price? Sean Conroy with the Consumer Protection Division of the Georgia Attorney General's office says if businesses do add that COVID charge, it is legal. They just have to announce the surcharge through social media or on signs in the restaurant. If they don't, they could be violating Georgia law. MCCALL says he is not necessarily in favor of the COVID surcharge.
I don't know why they would want to put a label on it. Prices go up for various reasons.
So we can verify that, yes, it is legal in Georgia to add a COVID-19 surcharge as long as it's clearly stated to your customers before the sale is complete. The Consumer Protection Division also says if you believe a business has failed to disclose that extra charge prior to purchase, you can file a complaint. In Warner Robins, Sarah Hammond, 13 WMAZ News. Houston County high schoolers spent the day learning how to be an adult. They were assigned a job.
I'm a librarian. I'm a cook. I'm a police officer.
Mechanic.
A spouse.
And my husband is a bricklayer. A dispatcher. A landscaper.
The architect.
And children.
I have a 4-year-old son. A 1-year-old. 4-year-old child.
A 2-month-old baby.
Then they had to visit 10 stations to buy things like housing, insurance, food, and childcare, all while trying to stay in their budget. And Precious Williams says it's harder than it looks.
I'm broke. I am broke.
Micaiah Lamont agrees.
Well, I'm broke, and I understand now how my parents are.
The fickle hand of fate even visited some of the students to deliver flat tires, speeding tickets, or a lottery win, because that's life.
I got a speeding ticket.
Speeding ticket.
As for what the most surprising major cost was,
I think it would be childcare, because it was $800 for a daycare, and that's a lot of money.
Robbins Regional Chamber of Commerce President April Bragg says it's all about preparing the future workforce.
We want to ensure that they're contributing members of our workforce and our community and not struggling with things like having to live paycheck to paycheck.
At the end, they had to add it all up to see how they did.
I didn't realize how much stuff that you actually have to buy when you actually get on your own.
Right now, I'm just frustrated. I'm broke.
I need to manage my money a little bit better. I know what my mom goes through now.
Essence Hunter gathered nearly 200 people in Warner Robins and Centerville to march against violence and injustice against African Americans.
I was honestly amazed at the amount of people that showed up.
But what comes after the protests?
I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
Hunter says she would like to see more education in officers' training.
But I feel like it should be a part of training, like a briefing, just specifically on racism and how to deal with it, how to deal when your partner is racist and things of that sort, how to calm them down.
Centerville Police Chief Chuck Hadden says moving forward comes down to two things.
I think it's education. It's education on our behalf as police officers, and it's also communication with the community.
Warner Robins Police Chief John Wagner says it starts with an open dialogue, and he feels he's had that with some of the protesters.
Some of them wanted to know about the hiring process and how that went on, some of the different laws, how they're applied, what our training is.
Hadden says he had a protester approach him about setting up a citizen review board in the county, and he says that could be a good thing.
That opens the doors to law enforcement. You have great transparency when you do that. Nobody can say that you're trying to cover up or you protect your own.
Hunter says she's using her platform to encourage people to vote and get involved by going to city council meetings.
I think it accomplished the idea that just because we're in a small town doesn't mean you can't make a difference.
In Houston County, Sarah Hammond, 13 WMAZ News.